Chit. Oh, Chit, what's going on, Chad-a-Moran? Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the... Damn, I went quiet. Welcome back to the Kilted Pork channel. It is me, the Kilted Pork guy. Welcome back to Therapy Thursday. Today, if you are unaware of what Therapy Thursday is, every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, I get together with my sister Asteria here on Twitch, and we discuss mental health topics or just whatever's going on in our lives and whatnot. And we encourage anybody that comes through, that is watching or whatever, to bring us their mental health questions or whatever's troubling you, this and that, and post in chat. And then we can discuss it. And since my sister is a professional therapist, she knows a lot about what is probably going on and how to possibly help you navigate this crazy world that is life. So yeah, that being said, let's bring her in. Should I scare her? I mean, I want to scare her sometime. Like, freak her out, it'd be great. Hello, hello, I know somebody's in here. Hello.
Hi.
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 Welcome.
I was here like looking at your in the stream of like when you're gonna unmute, and I was like, no, I should be like hello.
But I have everything muted and deafened, so even if you did that, I wouldn't be able to hear it.
I know, that's why I was like, fuck.
Sucks
Anyway,
to suck.
I am truly a vacuum. Anyway, what's up?
A
What's
vacuum? What do you mean?
Because I suck.
Oh, I was like, wait, huh? I was like, do you take in a lot of trash? Or do you have to be plugged into a wall if you're still from the 70s? Like, what are you talking about?
Yes, the second one.
Yes, all the above.
All of the above.
I am equipped with bristles.
I am ready at all times.
Nice.
So how are you?
Well, first get your spiel.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Hi everyone. It's me, Asteria.
It is I.
It is I. I have arrived. I am Asteria. I, as Asteria, am a marriage and family therapist, and I work within the bounds of the state of California, which I have to emphasize. So those are the laws and ethics to which I work under. So welcome to Therapy Thursday. I like to use this platform to give back to the community. I understand that therapy is expensive and resources may be difficult to come by. So I like to use this place to answer questions and give support to mental health questions, general, diagnosing questions I can answer, kind of questions based on self-esteem or anxiety, depression, and related so forth. My background is in trauma and dissociative disorders, personality disorders, anxiety, depression, and I want to make it very clear that using this platform is very important, so I like to hold to some ethical bounds while I'm here as well. Again, please feel free to share what you and your questions, comments, or concerns. However, because I am a marriage and family therapist and I am off the clock, technically, I do not want to be, or like, I don't want to use this place as a way to kind of like have that conflict of morals. So one piece is I do not do any diagnosing here. If you would like to understand more about diagnosing or would like to complete psychological testing, please go ahead and lean into finding those or psychological testing in your area. Check with your insurance, see if it's something that's covered. See if there's kind of sliding scales in your area that you're able to do that, or ultimately get a therapist and discuss diagnosing with them. Additionally, because I'm a marriage and family therapist, I do have protected classes that I have, or within the state of California, that I have to protect Those are people that are 18 and under. Those that are legally identified as dependents, and those that are 65 and older. And although when I'm off the clock, I do not have to do any types of reporting, I still do not feel comfortable of discussing such topics such as suicide, especially suicide, for folks that are 18 and under. So if you are 18 and under and discussing that, I'm already going to go ahead and shut it down. I encourage you to lean into your resources, call your local suicide line. There is a national suicide line that you can look up pretty darn quickly, and get the support that you need to get. Otherwise, if you're here looking for diagnoses, I'm not here to give them, as I already stated. So if you're here to check to see if your mom is narcissistic, let's just assume she just is.
She probably is.
She probably is. So let's just kind of stop beating around the bush about that one. Assume as so. Outside of that, I think that's my spiel. So please feel free to bring questions, comments, concerns into the chat. We're going to go ahead and just keep on chatting about what's going on between us, bringing it back to mental health. I have some things I could bring up. I got some topics standing by if need be. Otherwise, we just kind of let this naturally flow, and we'll hold space to whatever the chat would like to bring up.
Perfect. Thank you. And hello, Combo. Welcome in.
Hi, Combo.
How are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually good.
Did you see your therapist today?
No, I see my therapist on Fridays now. Which I kind of like better, because like going straight from work to therapy to this is like a lot. So I see my therapist on Fridays, and I see her every other Friday. So I get to see her tomorrow. I have some things I want to talk to her about, which is exciting. I like working with my therapist. She's so cool. What was I gonna say? But no, I'm okay. I have an update about that whole thing that we were talking about last week about having to do that. I had to do that breach in confidentiality because of the suicidality. And I had to.
Wait, the one where you had to bring in the law enforcement?
Yeah.
That whole thing, okay.
I have an update on that, if we want to get to that.
Sure.
Outside of that, if anyone is familiar with our chat, we have brought on Secret Wookie into our chat. However, he's not here this week, but he'll be coming back next week. So
what about Weeb?
And Weeb is also not joining us tonight. But so it is just going to be old-fashioned you and me tonight. Yeah. And so, but Wookie was informing me that there might be a possibility that he might be in the chat, because that's how he can arrive today.
Okay.
But outside of that, it will be you and I. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I have things are getting more predictable with my work schedule, which is really nice.
Balance.
Balance. Oh God, balance is so good. Let's see. I got the first population I ever started working with was all male, which I love working with the all male population, but specifically the population was male, and it was surrounding substance with concentrations to gang mentality.
Was that after you kind of switched from the main branch to where you're at now, or was this like years ago?
This was years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was working with gang mentality, prison mentality, and homelessness. And so since then, I went from that population to trauma focus with women and gender nonconforming. And the reason why I bring this up is because this week, since I moved to my new place, I get outpatient, and I got for my first male client in like a couple years, and so they came in. He was so straightforward. It was very nice, and I was like, and he's just like, this is why I'm here. This is what I want to work on. I am receptive to whatever you have to say. And I'm like,
That's so much better. He's like, he walks in, I want pizza. We have pizza. I want that pizza. Here's your pizza. Thanks. Bye. I'm like, man, that shit's easy.
It's like, holy shit, this is so nice.
Like, wow. A, B, C, D, gone.
It's like, wow, really? You really do. So that was nice. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, things are pretty okie dokie at this point. Things have like, the last thing I'll say about my check-in is, ever since, like, I don't know if you recall or chat recalls, but a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month now, I had kind of like this moment where like a lot of my big emotions that I've suppressed a long time all came out. And since then have been checked in on a lot more, have been much more emotionally vulnerable probably than I've been my whole life, and I kind of hate it, but I also really do like it, and it's kind of crazy that I admit that. And if you're one of the people that are listening that are helping me become emotionally vulnerable, don't get a big head about it. But anyway, but yeah, and how I know I'm more emotionally vulnerable is because, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, so I'd love to hear if you have, but I know when I'm emotionally like feeling open. I don't want to say exposed, but open. When I feel kind of like this pit in my stomach feel a little shaky. And it's like the same feeling I kind of equated to like when you're about to perform in front of a crowd. But it's like you're not familiar or used to performing in front of a crowd.
Yeah, just that anxiety. It's also kind of feels like you really need to take a shit.
I know, like that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
that. Very similar.
But it's very similar, yeah. And so I acknowledge it, and every time it feels stronger, I feel that means I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in being vulnerable, because I think that feeling has been a deterrent from me wanting to be emotionally vulnerable for many folks. And I don't like that feeling's uncomfortable. Not that I hate it, but it's uncomfortable. But because of my trauma, I used to be fearful of it. I was scared of it. But I'm realizing it's like not as scary as it once was. I have a lot of much more emotional attunement and care from folks around me, and that's making it feel more safe to be present. And because of that, I've been feeling much more genuinely present as a whole.
What do you mean by being present?
So because of events that I grew up in, that you're familiar with, is I would dissociate a lot. So if we want to talk about dissociation today, where if for anyone, I want to say it in very like plain terms, because even though I sometimes assume people know what dissociation means, I'm going to just assume people don't. So dissociation is a survival tactic that our bodies naturally do, where they disconnect us from our physical experiences in the name of safety, because it's getting too overstimulated or too overwhelmed. And so to protect it, it kind of disconnects us from the situation or the world around us, right? Which so
Mhm.
in itself is something that we naturally do because our minds and our bodies try to use it tries to be mindful of the energy it uses, right? But if it's using too much all at once, then it kind of like disconnects. Well, what happens is that when we're exposed to traumatic events or environments, we may be more accustomed to doing that and it does the job. But if it gets to a point where or individuals are dissociating much more often than they need to, or are getting triggered way too easily by stimuli that is not as intense as those traumatic events, they may have what is called a dissociative disorder. Now, for clarity purposes, I am not diagnosed with with a dissociative disorder, but with diagnoses, there are what are called specifiers. So this is where like there could be a diagnosis, but there could be a version of that diagnosis or an added on quality of certain diagnoses. So for PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, there's a specifier that's called with dissociative traits or dissociative tendencies,
Mhm.
right? And so with people that have PTSD with dissociative tendencies, like myself, um, when there's when there are or reminders to our trauma, or things that kind of resemble it in some capacity, our system basically remembered that our nervous system remembered that and said, "Oh, start disconnecting now," right? And so it will disconnect from the environment because it's preparing for that traumatic event again, right?
Right.
uh, so however, I've been working on it, especially in the recent years, and I was dissociated for a lot of my life because there's my body was in an environment such as my upbringing where it wasn't able to allocate when was the right time to and not dissociate because
Mhm.
it was always kind of traumatic, where the situation I grew up in, because it was just unpredictable. If you're new here, I'll give a quick snippet in saying like I grew up, Kilta grew up with, and we were exposed to our father who is a meth addict. So there's a lot of unpredictability on when he's using, when he's not using, and even when he wasn't using, he was just a douche canoe. There were times that he was fine and nice, but those were much less and were outweighed by the unpredictableness of his behavior, the lack of predictability and consistency in the home. And that's just him. Nonetheless, how Kilton's mom or my mom responded to the situation. So it was just a lot. So,
Yeah.
um, so in all of this summary, um, I've been more present in recent years, especially where I'm actually feel connected to my body. Um, and some people may have experienced such a level of dissociation and are so disconnected from their bodies that they're not even aware of like physical health and physiological health elements. Like, um, they might have like there's some people that are so dissociated a large proportion of the time that they're not even sure or aware that they have like UTIs or heart problems or joint problems or gastrointestinal problems. And that's why many times when people are like, it doesn't even seem like this person's here, it's like, yeah, there's probably a chance
Probably
that they're
not.
not. And there's different versions of this, because again, I'm just talking about the specifier to post-traumatic stress disorder, but there are dissociative disorders that are in themselves their own thing that go from a spectrum from like a specifier of to PTSD to its own different versions of diagnoses, such as derealization, depersonalization, dissociative identity disorder, dissociative amnesia, and dissociative fugue. Like, there's a lot of them. So, yeah, dissociation.
Greetings, Hey Shaker. Welcome in. Yeah, there's a lot going on with that. Yeah, I was trying to think if I disassociate or...
Everyone does.
Yeah, but to what degree? Because honestly, there's
a great question.
Days, because I'm sure there's different degrees to it, because I'm kind of like thinking about it. I was like, I will have whole weeks go by and I'm just like, I don't even know what happened.
Right.
Like, it just feels like my body's on autopilot, but I'm not actually there for any of it.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of go along. I'm like, oh my god, it's already October. Like, wasn't yesterday a Comic-Con? What happened?
Right? Weren't we just there?
Yeah, wasn't that like the last good day I had?
Oh, dang. Well, that's the thing. It's like if you dissociate and you feel disconnected from yourself and the world around you, like, for example, you may feel like detached from your body or feel as though the world around you is even unreal.
Yeah, I get that. I was just thinking that the other day.
So that can, like it, first of all, I always want to make it very clear for anybody in here before anyone starts self-diagnosing, because, again, I'm not going to get too deep into self-diagnosing for some folks, but I'll say this. It's dissociating. First of all, just because you dissociate, does it automatically mean you have a dissociative disorder? Okay? Remember, as I said in previous streams, and I'll say here again, that the line between a natural or common behavior and a diagnosis is how much and the severity it's impacting ideal functioning. Okay, so dissociating is very natural. It's a way to cope with stressful experiences, and for some people it's even a part of certain cultural or religious practices. Some people may like disconnect from the world as a form of meditation,
like monks,
or prayer, like monks, or like prayer, or something like that. So you may even feel a form of dissociation if you're engaging in like alcohol use or certain medications or substance use. So again, I just want to make that very real, because again, there are different types of these diagnoses, and they look very different for different people. So yeah.
I have a question, because you brought up the whole thing about like substance use and all that. Now because I will admit I have dabbled in things. And there's things like alcohol and, marijuana, like those, I guess you can count that as like kind of dissociating.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. When you just have some drinks and or smoke some weed and go, cartoons are on now. And then you just veg out. But why is it that it seems, at least in my experience, downers feel more like disassociation? Disassociation? Is that right? Yeah.
Association.
Yeah. So downers feel like disassociating, but uppers that I've tried before, I swear I've been sitting there like I've never been more here than right now. You know what I mean? I'm just like,
are you taking Adderall?
Maybe.
Okay.
Wait, let me. What's the other one?
Ritalin?
Yeah, it's one of the two. I don't know. Let's just say I have some that I picked up, and on very, very stressful like school load weekends, I might take half of one just to turn off the ADHD. You know what I mean?
It's interesting that you say turn off the ADHD. Because depressants are just in themselves, like, why? Because people are like, why? Like, people say depressants, but like, or downers, But downers or depressants are just that. They're like substances or chemicals that depress the brain and the central nervous system.
Kind of like my what the hell am I taking? Lamotrigine or Lamictal or whatever, my epilepsy medication. That's a depressant.
Yes, it is.
That makes me slow.
Yeah, things that are like they can be like they could come in the form of medications that are to help with like sleeplessness, anxiety, tension, and epileptic seizures. So the thing is that like what happens when this occurs is that's what it does. It depresses these things. One of the ways, like I like to say, is that sometimes, or like for instance, like alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
As much as people, and here's contrary to popular belief for many folks, just because you start to feel like happier, you want to dance, or you feel more energetic when you drink, alcohol is still a depressant, right? Because it's not that it in itself is making you depressed, although let's talk about if you drink too much or like after a certain point of drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard the question of like, well, if alcohol is a depressant, why do I start feeling like happier and stuff like that, right?
Because it's an inhibitor of certain receptors, right?
Yes, exactly. It's inhibitor of pain receptors, right? So many times, what can be going on in a very simplistic way of talking about this is that they in themselves are inhibiting your pain. So what you're feeling is the genuine connection of happiness, or what is the flow of your serotonin, and I know these types of things, right? But what happens when that occurs is that it inhibits it for so long, and then what happens is this wave of the buildup of that like those inhibitors, right? So again, this just like they slow down the nervous system, and the nervous system is the system that holds a lot of the mapping of trauma, and it can make it just like, again, it can slow down the activity of what's going on in your body, aka the downer part of it.
Hello, Michaela.
And then allows you to experience like feelings of relaxation.
Yeah. And so I imagine if you're blocking that stuff long enough, it's kind of like, I don't know if this is how this stuff works, because I'm not like a pharmaceutical specialist or so much, or even a chemist, is kind of like when you're like draining a bathtub, you can put a blocker or a plug in it, and it'll stop the water from going down the pipe, so maybe you can like deal with whatever down the line, but eventually it's still going to keep filling up. So once that plug is pulled, it's all going to be like, whoa, here it comes all at once.
Yeah.
Hedgy, or not hedgy, sorry, man, my eyes are screwed up, it's late. Welcome in.
So yeah, and so again, it reduces the inhibitors. It like impacts mood. It, because of that, it impacts the flow of anxiety and stress to the body. There's slowed reaction times, impaired judgment, impacts to breathing, and but also increases the likelihood of accident or injury, right? And if you start to increase the amount of this, you can start to have impaired judgment, impaired coordination. You might, because it's impacting your nervous system, it might cause you to vomit. It may even have you choke on your vomit. Like they're like blackout, memory loss, for some to a further degree, coma, and even you can die from it. Yeah.
We're doing pretty good today, Michaela. Thank you for asking. I hope you're doing well. Hopefully you're feeling pretty good. And if not, if there's anything you would like to discuss, feel free to drop it in chat. Drop. Man, I'm slurring my words. Drop it in chat. Man.
Drop it in chat, yeah.
Yeah, from Boston. But
benzos are a downer.
I know he is. That's why we don't talk to him. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, that's fucked. Alcohol, benzos, opioids such as heroin. These are all downers.
Michaela wants to know, can we discuss ADHD? We were just kind of branching off that, right? Or not branching off it, but it was just kind of in the mix right there. But yeah, I mean, we can keep running with it. What would you like to know?
Yeah, like that's...
Yeah, because we were just talking about different like substances and what they do, and then we were talking about Adderall, and I've had some available. So because I was saying it kind of turns off of my ADHD so I can focus. I just say it. What it did for me was it's like the best way I can explain it for me was it was turning off 10 TVs and only watching one. So you remember the episode of Invader Zim where like Zim tried to program his robot parents to be good parents, so he had like 10 TVs going.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And Gert's just sitting there like looking at all. It's like, that's what it feels like. Then he just switches it all to like the Scary Monkey show or whatever. Like that's what it is. Just like bam, one show. There it is. This is what we're working on. Let's see. Michaela asks, how does the meds work and what is going on in the brain when you have ADHD? And go.
So I could only speak so much on the meds piece because medication is outside of my scope. So, and I always want to respect like my scope of competency and my scope of practice. Despite if I know more or not, I just don't, because it's not what I actively practice and I don't do prescriptions. I will only say up until a certain point.
Because that's a psychiatrist?
You were talking about psychiatrists or medical individual or like medical medicine at that point, but not and again, psychiatrists or psychologists. I think psychologists. Now that I
get the two mixed up.
I just mixed up myself, but I'll probably remember in a second. But there are people that hold the space in between the two worlds, obviously. But that's just not me. Like that's just not my role in all of it. I'm a marriage and family therapist, so I just focus on clinical psychology. When it comes to like ADHD, there's like that's how it impacts the brain is such a loaded piece of it all.
Well, let's just kind of like reread that. Maybe it'll help you. They're saying, what is going on in the brain when you have that? Like, what is causing your brain to just be like, squirrel, look at that. Did you hear that purple's not a real color? Whoa. It's like, stuff like that.
Okay, so let me see. I'm trying to kind of think of like the kind of summary of what to say, what's going on. Let's see. I would say, okay. So when it comes to ADHD.
Well, here, just real quick, they say, AKA, why am I bouncing off the wall right now?
Oh, why I'm bouncing off the wall right now? Well, okay, let's kind of start off by saying this. First of all, I cannot say this enough to anyone. I'm going to kind of break it down in this angle for just a second, so I will eventually get to answering that question. But I have to go at this angle. First of all, I cannot stress this enough to you, me, or the next person. The term ADD does not exist anymore. And I know it's like, why start here? But it is important to what we're talking about. The term ADD has not existed since the 80s, 1980s at this point, because the history related to understanding ADHD has been kind of finicky and started off with like not in the world of psychiatry, but actually in the when it came to like children and pediatrics and so forth. But anyway, the whole point is this. ADD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. What I like to do is I like to encourage people, instead of seeing it as attention deficit disorder, is to see it as attention deficit and or hyperactivity disorder, because you may have the inattention, you may have the hyperactivity, or you could have what is called combined presence, and you could have both. Many times people think like just because they have one presentation, that doesn't mean that they don't have ADHD, right? So ultimately, what is happening is that with folks that have ADHD, is that every day where like the prefrontal cortex, it's unable to properly regulate various thoughts and feelings. So this little spot, I wish I could actually show. So Kilted, I need your help. This area, the front area of your brain, so it's like right above your eyes and this like skull area, right above here near your hairline. That, in typically in a more common space, that is your prefrontal cortex. I'm just gonna trust that he's pointing at it.
Yes.
Thank you. And the way that the brain works is that when we receive information, we do not receive information from our body straight from our body to our prefrontal cortex. What happens is that it goes through our spine into our limbic system, and then signals are sent to the other regions of our brain. And one of those other regions of the brain is our prefrontal cortex, right? The prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that holds a lot of our ability to respond to situations rather than just react. However, the thing is that ADHD impacts the directly impacts the prefrontal cortex, and is unable to properly regulate those thoughts and feelings. So what happens is that at the when it comes to the prefrontal cortex, it's responsible for thinking, thought analysis, and regulating behavior. And so this is also going to include being able to kind of like mediate like conflicting thoughts. It impacts ability to make choices between what is right, what's wrong, and kind of may even impact the ability to follow through thought to seeing what is the outcomes of actions or events. Okay. And so this vital region of the brain, like with the prefrontal cortex, also regulates short-term and long-term decision making. And it also, the prefrontal cortex is also the place that helps us focus thoughts, and they are able to pay attention to learn and concentrate on goals. Well, when there's an impact where I like to think ADHD is that when we're getting all these signals to our thoughts, our feelings, our problem solving, our memory, and all of that, it's like in our prefrontal cortex is a very busy intersection, and everybody's about to crash into each other.
Gotcha.
All at the same time, right?
Downtown New York.
Yeah. So, and like each of these cars is like one's attention, one's behavior, one is judgment, one is emotional responses, right? And these are all messengers that hold those thoughts and feelings, right? So a person with ADHD will likely react to what is ever at focus in the moment, ergo the fastest car or the strongest messenger, right?
Right.
So people with ADHD, they have an unregulated prefrontal cortex where there's no traffic lights, no stop signs, and pretty much the cars are just like, okay, go. So you could be a very motivated individual, you could be very smart, and so forth, but the moment that somebody may start asking you a question and your internal space sends you another signal, your attention switches.
That's me.
And you can get distracted immediately. This impacts the ability to focus. This impacts time management as much as people think like, oh, people with ADHD, it's like, why don't you just are able to stop doing that? It's like people with ADHD have what is called time blindness. It's a very it's common and easier terms to say it, where it's that their ability to like they can say like, I need to do this, but again, judgment of time is a signal to the brain, right?
Right.
And so understanding time or conceptualizing time isn't a strong message for people with ADHD, as the emotion behind as strong as the message behind a time sensitive like action. So it's like, oh, if you said, oh, me and my friends are going to be meeting at 12 for lunch, right? That could easily be impacted for their ability to commit to that time frame, right?
Right.
Whereas if at 12 there is an assignment that's due that you need to get done, because it impacts your ability to function and move in the world, that will strongly or exceed that message, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even in that, that does not mean that necessarily the individual will be able to allocate the time to say, oh, if I get it time at this time, I'll be able to have it done by that time. What happens instead is that they will have all this busyness happening, and at first, and then they'll see that point and they're like, okay, now that needs all of my attention, right?
Right.
Now, what I want to also emphasize real quickly, because again, I want to talk about the comorbidity, or the part where multiple diagnoses can live together, is if you are an individual that comes from an upbringing or a background or lives with trauma that makes you have to, or that has shamed you or harmed you or impacted your sense of safety to commit to time, that does not mean you have any less ADHD. The trauma will then start activating other chemicals in your brain, such as cortisol, to motivate and strengthen the message and necessity of something being done, because of the desire to decrease the likelihood of being harmed. I make this very clear because just because somebody's, or that being said, everybody's ADHD is going to look differently if you have it. Okay?
Right. So, I mean,
yeah,
like things that I've noticed, and also real quick, Night Hedgie's going to have a question after this, but it's a bit deep, they say, so be prepared. But with the ADHD thing, there's, I don't know if you want to call this a skill. Actually, it's not even a skill. It's probably just like a result of ADHD, I would imagine, is with certain subjects in school, they'd be like, oh, you have, 3 weeks to write this assignment. And I don't know if you want to call it procrastinating, but I guess it is, and I hate doing it because I'm like, I got to get this done. I got all this time. I got to get it done. And like I just keep putting it off. But then last minute, where it's like, this thing's doing 2 hours, I can just diarrhea out an entire paper and turn it in and be like, there, it's done. But it's super high stress when it's happening. You're just like, fuck, and then you're like, oh, you got a freaking A-. I'm like, hell yeah. Whew. Well, but I stressed over it for 3 weeks when I could have just got it done at the beginning.
Sure, because again, what you're saying is what is being put behind it as a motivator to complete the deadline or meet the deadline, right? The thing about with ADHD is that these folks, well, the thing is that ADHD, or when it comes to the brain, because brains also have what is called negative bias, right?
Right.
So it is constant, and as much as people are like uncomfortable with like criticism, and and they may be even more vulnerable to it because they've come from backgrounds where they were ridiculed or their perceived value was impacted by how they function or how they were productive or whatever the case may be. It can be a motive, or it can be motivation in that it strengthens the message to get certain things done, but it could increase the discomfort of doing this for someone that has ADHD. So it's like this. So it's like a person that has ADHD may start to develop a mindset that only focuses on negatives to exacerbate situations so that they can engage in activities and prioritize activities to that help them minimize them being put in pain, but is kind of a double-edged sword because then they may experience pain or discomfort from the messages that their brain receives. So this can be really impactful, and the exposure to negative criticism may help them get things done, but not in an actual productive way, just more in, or how should I say, it can get the job done, but it may start to deteriorate the individual and the view of self in the world, and this could increase the likelihood of depression, other anxiety diagnoses, maybe even may bring on suicidality.
Gotcha. All right, let's put a period on that one for now. The ADHD business, because I want to get to what Not Hedgy had posted in here. So this one probably more up your alley. Luckily they are 18 years old, so that's good, I guess. So they're an adult. They say, me and my first girlfriend just broke up, and it's really screwing me up. Have you got any advice? I'm 18 and I'm addicted to drugs, so might be a hard one for you to answer.
Oh no, it's actually really easy. Sorry, not to put you down or anything like that, but no, that's pretty easy. Well, because again, my background substance and trauma, so this is literally what I study and do like every day.
Perfect.
So,
good news for you,
yeah.
Hedgy. Or not Hedgy.
So,
it's not Hedgy, it's somebody else.
So ultimately is this. The thing about substance use, despite if it's an upper or a downer or whatever the case may be that you may be doing, is that when you're engaging in substance use, you're impacting and inhibiting your body's ability to experience emotion. This is very close to what we were talking about at the beginning about dissociative disorders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is that many times, and I hate to burst the bubble for many people, but when you use substances in the times that you're experiencing emotional discomfort or pain and so forth, you're not actually making it go away, you're just prolonging it, right? So what happens is that when you experiencing a lot of these emotions and so forth, when you start to you're using, again, it's an attempt to solve a problem, right? Because when it comes to using whatever it is, your body has learned that it receives these signals that you're in pain, and it's saying, hey, this pain is pushing my ability to manage this stress over the edge, or putting into a point of discomfort that I don't want to manage right now, make it stop, right? So the body in all of its wisdom and the brain in all of its wisdom can't tell the difference if something is adaptive or maladaptive, whether it's good for us or it takes away from us, right? It just learns it works, do more of it. But the problem with substances is that substances are just temporary, for either temporary pain relief and or temporary pleasure, right? And it only prolongs your body needing to experience and kind of go through that pain, right? So the problem is that, or like with that, it's really, really important, and I encourage more than anything, because I know right now, again, to each their own, I'm not going to assume too much, because again, this is just a general question, is that I encourage to find people, to find a social support or a group where you are able to kind of continue to talk about where this has left you feeling, rather than dismissing it or disregarding your emotions or trying to joke about it or anything like that. Because again, those ways again are just temporary relief, right? But by sitting there and kind of asking self, like, what am I truly feeling? Where is this coming from? You start to ask your body, ask your system, and show your system that it is able to experience these feelings. And then what you do is you properly process it. And in properly processing it, the bulk of that pain starts to slowly come out in its own ways, and it won't hurt as much over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that many times people think if I keep using, or I keep just using like these quick fixes to my emotional pain, eventually the pain will go away, but that's not how it works. It just makes it harder to tap into that pain, but it will keep following you. I like to think very similar to it of like, by like when you experience the pain, especially of a breakup, it's like buying something in full rather than putting it on your credit card, right? And not in the extra details of developing credit, womp womp womp, and all that, right? But it's more so like when you pay for it in full, or you do it in smaller increments of payment, or like quicker increments of payments where it's not going to be as long, you get out of it quicker. But what happens when you prolong it is, and you don't actually fully pay it off, is that you're just going to develop interest. It's going to keep following you. It's going to be something that you have to keep paying for. And and after a while, you're going to actually have to pay more for it in the long term than what was asked of it at the beginning. And you might develop a great credit score and be able to tolerate this, but it also impacts your ability to connect with people. It impacts your ability to find connection again. But it definitely, if you're going to keep using stuff when you're 18, it's definitely going to impact the ability for your prefrontal cortex to develop. And that's going to have impacts on functioning later on in life.
And we have personal experiences with those people within the family.
It is not pretty.
It's not.
I would rather choose my discomfort now over prolonging pain, because when I experience the feelings and everything like that personally, it is uncomfortable. I'm learning my relationship with my emotions too. I'm not saying I'm perfect, because perfectionism doesn't exist. It's a form of addiction. I'll keep saying that till I die. And because of that, but once the moment's gone and passed, I get to experience genuine happiness, not a pseudo form of happiness that comes from using, or a pseudo form of it by suppressing my emotions. I get to experience connection. I get to experience, empathy and compassion and all these things. And I've learned time and time again that when I feel these big feelings, and I process them, and I get met with genuine happiness afterwards when they come up, rather than a false form of it that kind of just continues to keep me in the swirl and spiral of my pain. Mm-hmm.
Well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the credit score is exactly what I was thinking, or not credit score, but credit card thing was my first thought. It's like, yeah, you're just going to, keep having to pay more and more and more and more and more later, the longer you sit on it. This is why all my stuff is being a pain in the ass here in my 30s, because I didn't know how to deal with it earlier. And it's still biting me in the ass.
And I'm somebody that's been in therapy since I was 10. And there's things that I'm still learning. Like and again, for anyone that's new here, when I say I've been in therapy since I was 10, I've had, off and on times where I didn't have therapists, and I did have therapists, and I had therapists that helped when they needed to. A lot of the things I always want to emphasize to many folks, not whether you're in therapy, whether you're not in therapy, is that there are lessons, there are connections that your brain makes, your body makes, that just are not about, or that just come with time. It really just comes with time, where you are in the world, who the people you surround with, because you could be in therapy now and get all of this information, but if your body, your mind is not ready to be receptive to it, it'll kind of just throw it out the window. But do I still encourage you to still try? Yes, because that increases the likelihood. Those environments, being around mentally, folks that are desiring mental growth and personal growth, increase the likelihood of these lessons, these thoughts to happen for you. So I encourage to kind of surround yourself in these environments. Again, I know therapy is expensive, so it doesn't always have to be therapy, but you can start joining. There's a lot of free support groups in a bunch of areas. There's Smart Recovery if you're somebody that wants substance support, but you don't like the 12-step approach. Smart Recovery is much more science-based. You can go into 12-step. There are different versions of it, not just Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, but there's also Emotions Anonymous, Codependency Anonymous, Al-Anon, which is for people who live with people or have loved ones that are engaging in addiction, and Overeaters Anonymous and so forth. So I just always encourage to keep an eye out for resources and check with your insurance, whether you have it or not, or kind of just check in with your local clinic or something along those lines, or online is always a great resource.
Yeah, I think that might have covered their next question. And Michaela, we'll get back to you in a little bit. We just want to kind of finish this up here. They say, I appreciate that. A follow-up question is, how do I get out of addiction if I can't get happiness outside of using? I think you just covered that.
Well, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Yeah, and then I'll read the rest of it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I always want to make it clear really quickly when we talk about addiction, at least what I want to talk about was the approach I see addiction is I see addiction is broken down into the to this 3-piece definition. The definition being one, cravings for a substance, a substance and or a behavior. 2, engaging in said cravings to obtain temporary relief or temporary relief from pain and or temporary pleasure. And 3, the inability or difficulty to stop despite negative consequences. And I want to make it very clear, the way I view addiction is I don't agree with the mentality of identifying self as an addict, because I don't have to say all the details of what kind of clinical jargon of it all is. Mm-hmm. But the long story short is this: I feel that sometimes when we say we are something, it limits our brain and our body's ability to see that we are anything outside of that, right? And we talked a little bit about this last time, about when the concept of when people say oh, I'm fat. It's how about instead you're a person that has fat on their body? Or instead of saying I'm a bad person or I'm a good person, it's you're a person that makes subjective good decisions and subjective bad decisions sometimes, or may engage in accidents, because you're a human first, right?
Right.
So in that, I think that addiction was an attempt to solve a problem at one point. It was an attempt to manage emotions. It was an attempt to tap into emotions. It was a manage to keeping yourself safe. It was a manner to engage socially and obtain like attachment with people and connection with people. But the point again is, when does it impact functionality, right? So at the point where it starts to impair your ability to function how you want to, this is when the addiction starts to impact this. So I very much think that people who think that they are addicts, or live with addiction, they think it's just due to this one behavior. But if you take a step back, people that are living with addiction, it continues to transfer from one thing to the next, right? So if it's not alcohol, it'll be shopping. If it's not shopping, it's drinking Monsters or energy drinks. If it's not drinking energy drinks, it's playing video games. If it's not that, it's social media, it's relationships, it's cars, it's a fucking exercise, it's fucking eating chairs, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is, because all it is doing is trying to manage a deeper pain inside the self. So what do I recommend? I recommend taking a very honest look of self, of what is trying to be accomplished by engaging in the said behavior, substance, whatever the case may be. And what I think is so important is to find social support and community as quickly as possible. I think it's a lifesaver or saver in itself, because one, relapse is a part of the journey, so you're not going to get it just perfectly right. And I want you to extend grace to you, because again, you're trying to challenge what you're already accustomed to, and you're trying to not just get rid of that behavior, but you're trying to replace it with more adaptive ways that you want to. But additionally, it's important to understand that it's just going to take practice. Just like engaging in the substances or behavior took practice, because there was that consistency, there was that exposure to, and your body gaining the lesson of, oh, this thing works, let's do more of it. There are other healthier alternatives to that, but it's going to take time. And this reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, because I'm a therapist, so I'm chock full of quotes. And the quote is, I'm trying to remember who exactly said it, but I think his name was Johan Hari, where he says the quote that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, the opposite of addiction is connection. And sometimes when we feel like we missed out on attachment and connection in our life, we attach to substances and or certain behaviors because it was consistent in the times that somebody else that we wanted consistency from, or people or an entity to be consistent with us, ended up falling short. So I encourage you to find social support, find a local 12-step, look into smart recovery, and finding people that are willing to accept you as you are, not a facade or a pseudo version of self.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd say try to stay away from other people that are using that stuff, because it all kind of goes into the social aspect part of it. You know,
yeah,
because my neighbor, they've been wanting to stop drinking, but their partner drinks a lot with their friends, and so, you know, since that's all they ever want to do, she kind of feels left out. you know, she doesn't drink, so she'll, you know, stop drinking for a while, but then they come over and like, oh, come on, come on, come on, come on. Then you're like, oh, okay, but if you really want to stop, you got to get away from that stuff. I mean, it sucks, but that's part of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's for sure.
Yeah, that works with anything. I mean, I kind of, like, that's one big thing about me losing weight was I had to stop hanging around with people that were just like, let's get brunch, and then there's a buffet tonight, and after that, we're going to get ice cream. It's like, ugh. Because it's just, if it's always there, then you're going to want it. Let's see, what else did they add to that? They were saying it's also a struggle to think of, it's also a struggle to think of it when, oh, damn it, hold on, I'm trying to read here. It's also a struggle to think of it will be harmful in the future as I don't really plan on being here. It's not a thing of being suicidal, but I don't feel like I'm living. I feel like I'm existing. So that's kind of what we were discussing earlier also.
Yeah, that's, again, that's a very common piece of, like, when you're engaging in a lot of substance or disassociated or, again, just not experiencing connection. Because humans are tied in and are hardwired to attach to one another. And if you're in an environment where you're not feeling connection, and you're not feeling that sense of, like, purpose, what the body does is that it depresses the self and trying to say, like, well, then what do I do, right? But this is a very common phenomenon of people saying, I don't feel like I'm living, I'm just existing. This is why I would say, like, many times, especially if you're, you know, 18 years old, like, again, the autonomy is like, I can't tell you what to and what not to do. I would encourage that you try to find some sense of connection and community as well as you possibly can, because there's not that sense of protection and safety and security. And so the system, being our bodies, will start to convince us that if we get connection, we may get hurt in losing it again.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that when we lean into that mentality, is that it also creates kind of like this what's that word and that term of, like, self-fulfilling prophecy, so that even when you do experience connection, your body won't allow you to be receptive to the connection, because it's outweighing the fear of being hurt rather than the opportunity cost of that you may receive connection. And again, I tell a lot of people, like I said earlier in the stream, that a lot of things will still come with time, and things start to click with time, but that means that you got to stick around for it. I honestly will say, and I don't mind sharing this with folks here, I didn't see myself living past 25, being mid-20s. I was experiencing a lot of emotional pain. I was exposed to a lot of emotional grief and a lot of unsafe environments. Coming into the world, going throughout my life, I thought that's all the world was going to be. I'm so thankful that isn't what happened. I'm very thankful to my siblings, to my friends, who practically saved me as a result of like me kind of giving up at one point. And now I'm like, as much as like I might still like be hurting and stuff like that, because again, being a human is the risk of hurt, but it's also an opportunity of like love and connection. I'm so happy I stuck around. Like, I'm happy I'm here. I'm happy I get to connect with people. I'm happy I get to connect and make memories and be here. And I'm, it's like, I never thought I'd say that. Trust me, I could only imagine younger me saying, "What the fuck are you saying right now?"
Yeah, it's like, what book are you reading? That's not right.
Yeah, it's like, that's not my story, but it ended up being my story, and the only reason I found out that it was my story is because I kept sticking around.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm still having trouble with that myself. I'm with connecting with people just because, well, whatever reason it is. I mean, we're still working on that one. They say, thank you. You have made a lot of things make sense. Things think about, or Think about you not making it past 25 released, so it helps. I appreciate it. Yeah, no problem. I'm glad we could help you so much. If you have anything that creeps up over the next week, that, you know, kind of gets under your skin, or you're like, well, how do I deal with this? Or, you know, write it down, whatever you're feeling, and then I recommend coming back in next week, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, and then if you got any more questions or follow up, or you want to just let us know how things are going, it'd be great to have you come back. And thank you for the follow also.
Feel free to come around, ask your questions, but most importantly, know that you don't got to do it alone.
Yeah, so we'll always be here to answer some questions. Well, on Thursdays anyway, because I'm not going to do it in the middle of the night on Sunday at like 2 a.m. when I'm probably, you know, dreaming about a giant bowl of goldfish crackers inside of an aquarium or something. Who knows? Anyway.
Oh boy, 3 a.m.
Oh boy, 3 a.m. Time for a Krabby Patty. Yeah, exactly.
I'm usually probably ready to have a burger at that time, but we'll still not be available.
Yeah, 3 a.m. on Sunday is burger time. But yeah, so like I said, if you have any things that you want to like get further into, just write it down, bring it back next week, and we'll always be happy to answer your questions. Let's see, we're going to kind of jump back into the ADHD thing with Michaela, because I think it kind of kicked in. Let's see, it is 3:46, so... Oh, no, it just says it is 3:46, so I might go get a burger.
Nice.
Perfect.
I
burger
hope it's a very tasty burger.
Yeah, extra Krabby Supreme. Burn it to a crisp and make it swim. Animal style.
Oh, dude, side note, I'm going to go to Chili's tomorrow because
oh my god, you're gonna meet him at Chili's? Sorry.
I'm gonna meet him at Chili's.
I don't know why that thing came up, but that I forgot who said that once, but that's just something fun to add to any conversation. We're gonna be studying. Oh my god, are you guys gonna meet at Chili's? I don't know why that crap was so funny to me, but you can just throw it into any conversation.
We talked about this in the stream one time. I was like, every time it's like we end up going to Chili's. It's like, oh, are you going to Chili's?
Oh, we don't. They said we don't have Chili's in the UK, so I'll get Five Guys. Oh yeah, well Chili's is more of a sit-down place. Five Guys is, man. I'm kind of bummed that the Five Guys by my house closed down. I like Five Guys.
Oh, there's one right next to me, but I honestly probably have gone to Five Guys twice in my whole life, and one time I only got fries. I didn't even get the fucking burger.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Is fries. The fries are delicious.
The fries are pretty solid. I'm a very big fan of potato. Call me Samwise. But anyway. Yeah,
I like Spud.
I like Spud. I like Spud variations. I like how it's, you know what? I think we all should be potatoes. And let me tell you why real quick, and then we'll talk about ADHD.
Speaking of ADHD, potato.
A potato. Why? Because you know what is always looking for another chance to make it? Potatoes. It is constantly searching for the soil, and the times that it has not been used, this is where those the quote eyes of potatoes start happening, and the vines coming out. They're like, I must find the dirt again.
Yeah, no kidding. They sprout in your cabinets.
I'm like, let me just grab my dish. Oh, I can't. The potato's holding it.
Oh, I can't grab my plates because the potato is latched onto it.
It's like, let me just shake that off real quick.
Let go, potato.
Let go, potato. But anyway, ADHD. What's the question?
It was kind of along the lines of it. I imagine. So, hopefully they're still here. Michaela was saying, where is it? Like the chat for some reason, like it'll switch people's shade of the color of their name. So theirs was dark green, and now it's like a fluorescent green. It's blending in with other people's. It says, why do I chew stuff? I have found my autistic butt chewing paper. That sounds like an oral fixation.
If it's not one thing, it's your mother, according to Freud.
What?
So Oh, because he has the way that Freud broke down like developmental like milestones. He broke it down into like oral, anal, like. Have you ever really like studied or like checked in about the concepts of Freud? It's fucking insane. Anyway,
No.
but I don't support Freud. This is a no Freud zone. Like we do not support Freud here.
Or fraudulent causes.
Or fraudulent causes. Haha. Just always think if it's not one thing, it's your mother. Freud joke. Anyway.
Gotcha.
So I'm not going to go too far into the autism thing because I know right now autism and ADHD are kind of like, no, I was going to like be mindful of what I'm about to say, but I'm off the clock so I don't have to. So they're like the quirky diagnoses right now. Not that they have any less validity or that they are not that they don't exist or blah blah all these things, but right now I cannot tell you enough how so many folks are self-diagnosing as ADHD and or with autism when like they're like, oh well, I have these certain symptoms, therefore I have autism. And I'm not saying that you yourself don't have autism. I just want to make this note real quick is that, again, what I said at the beginning of this stream is that just because we demonstrate certain behaviors doesn't automatically mean it's a diagnosis. But some people feel like they need to self-diagnose, and again, I'm not going to knock that too much in that you know, it helps people understand a lot of things. It helps people like challenge masking behaviors where they're like disregarding their their experiences and so forth. I just want to be mindful that not just any behaviors automatically mean certain things. I always encourage to just check in with a professional, and also always know that the ability to get an autism diagnosis and an ADHD diagnosis depends on testing, I believe, for some for folks, and like talking to professionals to get the official diagnoses. So just wanted to FYI. But anyway, eating paper. So I want to make it the thing about paper eating is I don't know if that's necessarily an autism thing alone,
well,
or it could
they're not eating it, they're chewing it. I think there's a big difference between eating paper versus chewing paper.
Well, there could be also a large difference in like where that's fitting in regards to the diagnostic world, right? Because like, for instance, have you ever heard of a diagnosis called pica?
No.
So pica
boo
is peekaboo. Pica is a it can be well, let me start off by saying what pica is. Pica is a mental health condition where people may compulsively swallow non-food items. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean like, because again, some people may just chew on stuff, and something like when they're just chewing on it, they may not need to consume it, but they may get a nutritional value just from saliva that they're trying to seek, right?
Mm-hmm.
So pica is associated with like stress management. This is something common with folks that can get pregnant. This is something that's common for children if it's ongoing, and there could be, but then again, there's like these extra pieces to it of like it could be as a result of people engaging in it if they're trying to seek alternatives to obtaining iron, and they have iron defificiencies.
That's
right?
why I heard that some kids eat dirt just because they don't have enough iron in their diet.
The important piece for the pica diagnoses is that whatever is the chewing and craved chewing item, it doesn't have nutritional value, but there could be something that they can gain from it. In that, like, there's kids that there's the gold glue thing that was popular, uh, eating dirt, soil,
Fecal matter,
paper, clay,
paper.
ice, these different types of ways. And it could be a symptom or a tendency in autism, not necessarily where it defines autism. Not that I'm saying that is what's going on here, but I just want to make it clear for anyone that's outside is also listening as well. Because again, Pica could also be, it could also coexist with people with schizophrenia and obsessive compulsive disorder or trichotillomania. So, yeah.
I mean, I find it like, well, I've chewed on paper before also, just not all the time. Yeah. I mean, you know, I feel like there are times where I feel like I have to be chewing on something, and if I, like my go-to, like gum doesn't really work. I feel like I need something that I can actually work on, I guess. So like sunflower seeds are always good. I like those because you can sit there and just like guide on them for a long time, or like a really, really like, you know, gas station-y piece of beef jerky.
Right, because of what is going on when you're engaging in the behavior, right? Because when you're doing that, it could be a form of self-soothing.
Yeah.
And again, it's a stress management piece.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that relates to anything. Kind of like right now, I'm messing with my fidget spinner as I'm talking, or like when I was taking history class, I doodle a lot while the professor was, you know, giving his speech or talking about whatever subject, and it just kind of helped me zone in on what was going on, just because my hands or my mouth is busy with something else. I don't know. It's like, I feel like doing those small little activities, like chewing seeds or playing with the fidget spinner, kind of takes like the one part of my brain that wants to be doing something all the time and like distracting it for a while. It's like giving a kid like a you know, jingle keys and like, here, play with this for a bit.
A jingle.
Dingle, yeah. Dingly.
So that's the whole thing, is that like that I relate as well, because again, when I was young, so here's story time with Asteria. Here's the thing. So this is something that was reported to me by my mother. Is this: when I was in kindergarten, according to my mother, and this sounds about fucking right, is that the teachers were believing that I had ADHD based on my inability to stay in my chair, my inability to, you know, concentrate and do all these things, blah blah blah, all the very stereotypical things. But the reason why they didn't follow up with diagnosing at a young age for me, which in one, you know, I don't know, I can't tell what would have happened or wouldn't have happened because of that, but I wasn't. But the reason why is because the teacher, which doesn't make any sense because teachers aren't trained in mental health diagnoses, silly teacher, is that because when I'm moving around and everything like that, especially when I'm moving around, I can concentrate on conversation, right?
Right.
And so going back to what you're saying is that I've realized when I'm doing something with my hands, or like even sometimes when I'm in an intensive conversation with some folks, I'll pull up like Candy Crush because in doing Candy Crush, it's an organized activity that allows my brain to actually focus, and therefore I'm actually listening to you more when I'm playing Candy Crush while talking to you than if I'm just staring at you and talking to you. Yeah. Because in my head, I'm thinking about so many things, like it's insane, right? So this is very interesting being a therapist. Because what does my job take? Me concentrating. So what do? What I do is I do this thing in me being a therapist where I focus on my clients in the way of like keeping like I have to focus on major words that they're saying. And in that, I've trained myself to being able to like focus on these major words, be mindful of these things. So I'm having this ongoing internalized dialogue inside my head while actively asking my brain a lot of the time saying, hey, I don't need that information right now. I'm going to put that to the side. And I have to do that like all the time. That's why when people are like, why are you tired after a day of work? I'm like, man, I was battling the demons so I could do my job. So, but what also helps is caffeine, right? Because, right. And people are like, why does caffeine help, or why do stimulants help with somebody with ADHD? So before I jump in, why do you think that caffeine helps ADHD?
Let's see, so it's a stimulant.
And stimulants are commonly diagnosed for folks with ADHD, such as Ritalin or Adderall.
Why would that... Is it have some...
Because again, like depressants, it's not, or like depressants mean it depresses the flow and inhibits.
Well, so then it like just hyperdrives your awareness or whatever, what's going on.
It increases the levels of certain chemicals, such as, and like these neurotransmitters in your system that could be related to dopamine or I never say this word right. It's neuropinephrine. Yeah, something like that. And what it's doing is that by doing that, it's helping the ability to improve like reaction time with these the increase of these chemicals. And it's because again, what is dopamine? Contrary to popular belief, dopamine is not the feel-good chemical. Dopamine is the kind energy? Of like it's the objective chemical, I like to say. So it's like it's the one that associates like this is what you need to do. And so it's like it with the likelihood of it increasing and so forth, it supports the function of our brain of like and having that flow of like, oh, I have to get this thing done. This is what I have to do right now. It's the motivator chemical, right? And so people easily confuse dopamine with happy chemicals because they think that dopamine is there when we feel good. But dopamine is what motivates us to find what makes us feel good. And therefore the association with it, right?
Gotcha.
Right? So so it increases the likelihood of dopamine being in the system and increases the I don't even try the other chemical. It fucking drives me bonkers. But by doing so, it helps our brain kind of actually start to be able to. It's like in this metaphor I said of, or like the analogy of a traffic, is that it starts to create a sense of direction for the cars. And increases the likelihood of there being a police officer saying, hey, go this way, or directing traffic more, right?
Right.
And so when I'm at work, I always start my day with a cup of coffee. That usually helps me. And then by noon, because I'm somebody that fasts, so I break my fast at noon, I have my lunch, and then I have my vitamins. And when I have my vitamins, I take a supplement that has a mixture of that are like much more like attention focused. And because of that, that helps me get through the rest of my job.
Is it Ginkgo biloba?
I kind of do, and it also decreases stress. So I just take a daily vitamin that has a bunch of shit on it.
Oh, okay.
So,
one a day.
like a 1-a-day, but it also has stuff that's like B6, B12, these things, right? Again, may I also quickly say, this is just what I do.
It doesn't work for everybody.
It doesn't work for everybody. This is just what I found works out for hysteria. Okay, so I suggest that if you're somebody that needs medication, please go to the proper avenues of doing that. What I definitely do not encourage, especially for the younger folks in here, to go and get it off the streets. Please do not get your shit off the streets.
Especially with the fentanyl freaking problem right now. Oh my goodness, that crap's in everything probably.
It's really bad right now.
Yeah, it's bad.
Like, we've had clients die because of it. It's pretty bad. So, yeah.
There you go, Michaela. So they say that it says, sorry I'm bouncing around questions about myself. I'm off my ADHD meds. Well, if you need to get more ADHD meds, don't get them from the streets.
Yeah, please don't get them off the streets. And again, I can't speak on behalf of just where you are, Michaela. I just can only speak on behalf of the, what I know in the balance of California and the United States. And again, you could always check with your local medical professionals or your local emergency room, whatever it may look like. Is that I just know that in California, at minimum, if you are out of your medication, you can go to and get an emergency refill. If again, that may be tedious, but I would highly suggest doing that rather than being left unmedicated, because again, it could be really impactful to the chemical makeup of the body.
How do you do that anyway?
About going in emergency refill?
Yeah.
You can go to your local urgent care and saying, hey, I ran out of medication, my psychiatrist isn't available, I don't have a psychiatrist or insurance, blah, blah, blah. And so they'll help you getting one, but they may give their own charge as a result of that. So, but they have to check your medical background and stuff like that. They can't just say, I need a refill. And they're like, okay, whatever you say, and then give you whatever meds.
Yeah. Michaela says, I'm totally out, but I'm getting more tomorrow. Well, there you go.
Okay.
Just going to have a nice 24-hour, spaz session. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually might be fun.
Or it may not.
Or it may not.
The other thing I want to quickly talk about, I want to be very careful about this. I'm going to read this from one of the resources I have about ADHD and emotional regulation. Okay. So emotions run through the intersection of the prefrontal cortex, bringing quick mood changes. Quote, I won the lottery 10 minutes ago. Isn't that great? But now my sink is overflowing. Oh my gosh, why does this always happen to me? Unquote, as an example. Impulsive anger or sadness or excitement or worry seems to come from nowhere when actually the emotion is a quick reaction to an event that just occurred. In this case, the sink debacle. That is what is dominating the person's focus at the moment. In the ADHD brain, whichever emotion is in focus at the moment becomes the faster car. This is why those with ADHD express emotions more intensely than may be justified for a given situation. In some folks, this often increases the likelihood of misdiagnosis of a mood disorder. So, just FYI.
Interesting.
What did you get from that, Kilted?
Well, I'm just trying to think, because there's probably been situations where I'm just like, bah! And it's like unjustified.
Yeah, or like there's just fluctuation of emotion that happens for you. I definitely know I'm like that.
Yeah.
I'm someone that's like, I'll be like, right? Because of what's in mind, right?
Yeah, it's like fruit stripe gum.
Yeah, it's like, Yeah. And it's, again, this is a great example of where it gets really tricky and where misdiagnosing happens a lot. Because even as I say this again, I'm somebody that's been properly diagnosed, or has been officially diagnosed, I mean. But it could be easily misinterpreted as a bipolar disorder, which is a mood disorder, and I definitely am not bipolar. And how I know is because I know what bipolar diagnosis looks like. But it also could be a personality disorder for some folks, where there's just this big changes in emotion. If you are unaware of the differentiation of these different diagnoses, it can cause a lot of harm. And I want to make that very clear, because just because there's fluctuations in mood doesn't mean it's automatically bipolar disorder, because bipolar disorder has to do with hypomania, mania, and depression. It's like, and can you tell the difference of that? It's not automatically borderline or personality disorder just because there's a fluctuation in mood, because again, what fuels the change in emotions is the challengings and impact to attachment. Ergo, personality disorder, because that's an interpersonal relationship disorder, right? And attachment trauma. So if you are not aware of the difference of these things, I encourage you to be very mindful to minimize the likelihood of just putting staple or blanket diagnoses just on basic observations of behaviors and mood alone. If more than anything, I encourage more than anything to leave it to professionals, please.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right, I think that wraps that up pretty good.
How are you doing?
Oh yeah, we never got to that. Oh, I'm really tired right now, that's for sure. I'm losing my luster for the day.
Have you had a fruit stripe gum?
No, I have not, because I don't want to be disappointed.
No.
The happiness is only temporary.
All feelings are temporary. We don't get to feel good forever, and I honestly wouldn't want to feel good all the time. As much as people are like, oh, I want to feel good all the time, I'm like, I don't want to. I really don't. And the book Brave New World really hit that home for me, why I don't want to always feel good.
Yeah, I just don't want to feel like garbage all the time. That's my goal.
And I also don't want to feel like garbage all the time too, right? Yeah. That's also a very valid piece.
Let's see. Michaela says, somehow I got a bipolar disorder also. I leave my diagnosing stuff to the professionals.
Okay. People can have comorbidity or go multiple diagnoses. I just one of the other things I always want to make sure in saying is that diagnosing, I know this is going to kind of sound like a little bit like, it's like, it may not make sense, but I encourage to kind of just give me a second in saying this, is that diagnosing is just in itself the ability for people like me to communicate what I'm seeing with medical folks or medical medicine folks, right? The diagnoses don't define an individual. It's just symptoms that they live with, right? The thing is that bipolar diagnoses is a mood disorder, whereas ADHD is an attention-based and dopamine deficiency-based diagnoses that can impact mood. And in that, it's really important to kind of, with both of them, actually, I encourage routine. Routine is really important for folks that live with ADHD and or bipolar diagnoses. Be respectfully to both, is because ADHD, when there's a routine, it kind of helps like the management of predictability, and that sometimes help organization for folks that live with ADHD. Whereas bipolar diagnoses, if you have a routine, you can start to recognize better like the changes in mood, and that helps better map out when there are fluctuations to hypomania or depression or manic disorder or manic symptoms. And that could be really impactful because sometimes if manic symptoms are left alone, it can lead to very serious injury, sometimes even death for some folks or hospitalization. So I think routine and predictability as much as possible is really important for kind of some tranquility and some sanity for these types of diagnoses.
Yeah. Like, just on my end, like, I noticed that, like, my mood drops. Well, I don't know. I could probably just chalk this up to being tired. Like, when I'm getting into bed at night, I'm usually not in a great mood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But who knows what the cause of that is?
Well, I mean, that could be a multitude of things because, again, it could just be overall exhaustion, or it could also, or it could be like exhaustion that's exacerbated because of dopamine deficiency, or it can impact mood. You know, again, humans need their rest. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough, especially if you have a ADHD and or bipolar diagnosis. Please sleep. Please do your best to get some rest.
Yes, I've been telling that to so many people, and then people are like, well, I got so much I got to get done. It's like, you're going to get nothing done eventually.
You will get nothing done after a while. If, like, when I was in grad school, it took getting into grad school, not when I was in my undergrad, but in grad school, to get my studying routine down. And I'm going to describe it, and it's going to sound bonkers to folks that don't live with mental diagnoses. So, but this isn't for you. Is this? My studying approach was I didn't start studying until 9 p.m. And what I would do is I would start organizing what I needed to do at 9 to 10. Then I would start studying for about an hour or so, or doing whatever I needed to do for an hour. Then I would take a actual timed like 10 to 15 minute break, so that I could manage the overdevelopment of stress in my brain. Then I'd go back and I'd do this until about like 2 to 3-ish, and then I would take a nap. And then, because again, a lot of information is retained better when you go to bed and when you wake up, and then it shifts from your short-term memory to your long-term memory better. And I would then I'd sleep during the day. Now, again, was I able to do that? I was only doing grad school, and grad school classes are only at night. So I was able to do that more than anything. So, but that's how I got through it. By the time I ended undergrad, I had before I got a bunch of things like changed, because my GPA was, was impacted by my original major, because I didn't do well in it. But before I changed all of it, I was sitting at a solid like 2.3 GPA.
Oof, that's low.
I know. But then I did a lot of like challenging and saying like, hey, these classes I had is when I had this God, I keep saying diagnosis, but this major, and they let me take it off my file and stuff like that. So I ended up graduating with a 3.7.
Damn.
And then but then I graduated from graduate school with a 4.0.
Dang. I doubt that I'm gonna get that, but
do you know why? Why it was easier in grad school than it was in undergrad?
Because it was something you enjoyed.
And it was one thing. It wasn't a bunch of nonsense fucking classes that like pulled my attention a million different ways, making me feel like an absolute fucking dingus.
Yeah.
I had one thing I focused on, and I fucking kind of like just nailed into the ground, and then it's just like, and that was it. Like, I had my attention in one spot. It was easier that way.
Yeah, it's hard to take the partial derivative of American history studies. Yeah, that was a bit of a stretch, but all right.
But it was good.
Yeah.
I got you. I was like, it's true though.
Yeah.
That shit's difficult.
Let's see. Michaela says, I get really aggressive in hypomania. I don't know why, and I hate when I do it. Yeah, that sounds like a not fun thing.
That makes sense because in hypomania is a significant increase for some folks in irritability and may increase the likelihood of reactivity to managing that. So, because there may be an increase in impulsive behavioral actions. So that makes sense. And I'm sorry that you have to go through that. That sounds very uncomfortable, and it sounds like it could really increase in, shame and guilt and stuff like that. But again, it's not, you're doing your best to manage with what you got. I hope that you're staying safe out there more than anything.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's see. Something else I was going to bring up about school this week. I kind of wanted to tell you this story.
Okay, what happened?
From yesterday, and guess what class it involves?
Physics.
Physics, yeah.
Yay!
So we had a substitute professor yesterday.
Why?
Because my professor was out of town for something, I don't remember. Like a memorial service or something, I think. I don't know. Anyway,
okay.
So what happened was this guy came in and I recognized the name, so he works on campus in the physics department somewhere, and he comes in and he's like, okay, well, your professor said that he just wants me to go over any questions you guys might have about the homework and this and that, blah blah blah. And someone raised their hand, they're like, oh, can you go over problem number whatever?
Great.
He's like, oh yeah. He's like, this is how you do it. He starts writing it up on the board, goes down. He's like, this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and that's how you get your answer. And he's like, does that make sense? And everyone's just staring at him blank faced. We're like, what? And
oh God.
He's like, all right, so that's how you do it. He's like, let's see. But your professor wanted me to show you how he does it, so let's see. So let's see his method. And he starts writing it up because he's like copying it down off the paper that the professor gave him. He's like, all right, this and this, and he's looking at it, and he's looking at the paper, and he looks back up the board, and he looks down at the paper. He's like, this is all wrong. This doesn't work at all. He's like, where's he getting this stuff? He's like, no, don't use that. That is incorrect. Don't, whatever he told you, no, it's wrong. And I was like, oh, this is great. So we're getting fed false information from our guy, and then also, he's sitting there and like other people are like, you got any other questions? It's like we're so uneducated on this subject that we don't even know what questions to ask. And so he's like, anybody else have questions? Just silent. He's like, you want any more problems? Just dead silence. He's like, okay, like anything? And I just raised my hand, like, can you just go over chapter 10? Like, can you give us a lecture on it? He's like, yeah, I can do that. He was like, all right, so do you guys know about this and how this works? And we're like, no. He's like, what about this? Nope. He's like, okay, let's go back a little bit further. What about this part of things? No. He's like, okay, we're going back a few chapters. Let's start way back here. I was like, yeah, let's go back like 3 or 4 chapters because... And I still have a hard time remembering what he taught us. Let's put it this way. I have more pages of notes from the one day he was there than I have for the entire semester. So, yeah, but the problem is, like, I decided after that class I was going to just... I literally went back to chapter 1 in the book, and I said, I'm just starting over.
Damn, dude, I fucking hate that for you.
Yeah, so I have homework that's due Monday for this chapter 10, but I have to, go through, not chapter 1, because that's just like introduction, like, oh, this is what this is how you do this, like, simple, mindless bullshit. You know how chapter 1s are. Yeah. They don't teach you anything. It's just like stuff that you should already know. 2 + 2 is 4. Yeah, thank you. I know what the addition symbol is.
MDEF.
Yeah, and so, like I said, I'm looking at it. I have to go through, because I went through a few chapters, but I still have to go through about 200 more pages before I'm even caught up. before I could start the
Jesus.
homework. I was like, great. I have a lot of reading to do, and unfortunately, I have to do meal prep Saturday, and then Eggy invited a bunch of us to actually go out for drinks on Sunday, which I hope actually happens this time because somebody forgot that they were working last time. Yeah. And oh, by the way, speaking of Eggy, she says that she loves her temporary therapist.
Oh, yay!
Because she was telling me yesterday, she was like, every time I go in that guy's office, I come out crying. Like, I was like, this guy's probably doing a good job. She's like, it's amazing.
Good job. Yeah, 10 out of 10 to Eggy. Good job, Eggy.
Yay! Too bad she's not here. I mean,
Eggy.
watch her jump in. She's like, I just signed in and heard my name.
He's like, you rang.
Yeah. Michaela says they hate crying. Yeah, I don't like crying either. I mean, even at times, I don't. I hate it because it's uncomfortable. And even at times where I'm like, I need to get this out and I want to, I just can't. Like, I try to force it. I'm like, hey, come on. And it's nothing. It's kind of like being constipated. You're like, it's there. Come on. Do something.
Do something. Poke it with a stick.
Yeah, poking it with a stick. It's like, I'm uncomfortable. Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah.
I love crying. I think crying can be so cathartic.
Yeah, sometimes once it finally does work, you feel better. Kind of like when you're constipated. You finally take a shit. You're like, oh, that hurt.
And everything feels okay.
But now I can go about my day.
Yeah, I hear that quite a bit of people are like, I don't like crying. And I was like, do you not like crying? Or did someone impact your relationship with crying?
I have no idea.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Michaela says, I cried this morning because I triggered myself. Like in a good way or a bad way? I mean, sometimes I have to trigger myself just to get it out.
Just quit it.
What?
Oh, you mean like actually like you think about things just so you can cry?
Yeah, it's kind of like when you gotta throw up and you're like, oh, come on, I just can't. Like, I don't like throwing up, but sometimes like I feel so bad that I have to. I'm just like, you know what? I just stick my finger down my throat to get it out. Like if I eat something that's bad, I'm like, dude, this is destroying me right now. I just like stick my finger down my throat and get it out, and you're like, oh, that's so much better. Whew.
What I typically do when I'm having tummy issues, if you don't like this, just mute it for a second. I'll come back in like 15 seconds. Is this? What gets it for me is if I'm sitting like where my face is next to the toilet bowl, because there's a smell that comes off toilet bowls, not just of not just like, of course, because that's where you use the restroom, but there's just a certain smell that just bugs the fuck out of me, and that will trigger me wanting to throw up. But again, I want to be mindful. This is not to encourage eating disordered behavior. This is because of tummy illness, so keep that in mind. This is not an excuse to engage in eating behavior, y'all.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so, mine's like, I think one of the last times I might have like ate too much of like something super spicy and it was just burning, and I was like, dude, no, this has got to come back out. I was like,
please make it stop.
Yeah, and then I just had to upchuck it, and I just felt so much better than I passed out.
I have always hated the feeling of throwing up, but as I got older, I was just like, but what I hate more is being in tummy pain for hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to just take the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, let's see. Michaela says it was a total accident, making themselves cry. Funny enough, it's because I said that I hate myself for getting really aggressive when I'm in hypomania. And that's kind of what triggered yourself.
I encourage a lot of self-compassion during these times, because the reason, like, one of the things I have to work with my clients a lot on is like, a lot of times they're like, well, I hate that I do this, therefore I hate myself. And I was like, okay, let's just make this clear. You are projecting self-hatred because of an action that you're doing that you don't intend to do and is coming as a result of symptomology or being triggered. Is that what I'm hearing a lot of them say? Yes, right? And I was like, so you don't hate yourself. It's that you feel safe enough to say that to manage the discomfort of the lack of control that you're having right now. Because if you had more control, would you engage in the behavior? I met with the answer 100% of the time of no, I wouldn't choose to do this. I'm like, then it's not you.
Yeah.
It's your symptoms. Like, and it's easier sometimes for us to lean into self-hatred or self-criticism as a way to feel a pseudo or false sense of control to make us feel better. But I encourage self-compassion and saying, hey, I'm doing the best I can with what I got right now. And people that understand that will understand that. But if belittling ourselves and putting ourselves down actually was helpful, we'd all be healed by now. So it doesn't work.
Exactly. All right. Well, it's about that time. We crossed 8:30.
Yep, it is that time.
I am super exhausted.
Go sleep.
Yeah, I need sleep. Because I got a long weekend and all that crap. I get to go running tomorrow, and I think my toe's broken, so that's gonna be fun.
Oh my god,
yeah.
dude! What did I just say about self-care?
Hey, I said I think it's bruised and it hurts, but it hurts a lot less than it did on Monday when I hurt myself. So we'll give it a go. If I can't run on it, I'll just go for a walk because walking's fine. Michaela says it's like 11:31 here, so they must be Central Time. I think that's about right.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Michaela, and your Central Time location. We will be back next Thursday for this again. So that's 6 with Wookiee. So that's 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. Oh, they're Eastern. Dang. With the time jumps all the time. I forget like who does
Central
what.
Central was 1 hour.
I thought it was like Mountain Time was 1 hour and Central was 2 or something. I don't know.
2 and then Eastern is 3.
Oh yeah, they said 11. I thought it was 9:30 for some reason. I don't know how to count.
Silly goose.
Yeah, that's my bad.
It's okay.
Yeah, so next Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, we'll be back doing this. And as far as my other streaming goes, I doubt I'm gonna have time to stream anything this weekend. Highly doubt it. But we will be back Tuesday for Tour of Watopia Stage 4, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
You're doing the 4th stage of that, so then we'll keep on riding the bike and destroying myself physically.
Oh God.
Yay! Training.
Being a human.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be good to yourself then.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thanks, Asteria. We'll see everybody later. Goodbye. Was it Chatamaran? Yay!
Goodbye, Chatamaran. Drink water and be kind to yourself. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye, Chatamaran. Bye, bye.